And welcome back to our March episode of Unpacking Endpoint Management. We got a great show for you today. I'm your host, Steve Thomas, with my co-host, Danny Guillory. Danny, how have you been, man?
So far, so good. I'm still
And
here.
as always, we have with us our adult supervision, Rochelle Blanchard. Good to have you, Rochelle.
Whoa, no adult supervision.
So before I introduce our guest, Danny, you recall that I was with the product group, and then for a little while I was not in the product group. I was an imposter, pretending to be something, and then now I'm back with the product group. And so we talked about, when I would ask people in the field when I was doing my impostership, as I call it, what keeps you up at night? We've already had a show on fines and compliance fines and regulatory fines. But the other thing that kept them up at night was everything having to do with data problems and data security, nightmares around data exfiltration events, nightmares around enterprise ransomware attacks, nightmares around them being in the paper by name because their company had this huge, massive data leaks. So I figured it'd be a good idea to address that topic, data security, especially in the day in our modern day of zero trust and AI, by bringing two product group resources on the show that we've never had on the show before. So we're absolutely thrilled to have them. We have with us Emily Blundo and Sarahzin from the Microsoft Purview team. Emily, how are you?
Good. How are you, Steve? Yeah, hi, Emily. I'm part of Steve's team, so part of the product group. I'm focused on information protection, data loss prevention, and then Purview for AI, which is our new area.
Awesome. And Sarahzin?
Good. Hi, everyone. I'm also on Steve and Emily's team as well, doing MIP and DLP. And then I'm doing Security Copilot for Microsoft Purview as well. And a little bit of multi-cloud too. So that should be fun.
Did you say Copilot?
I did. And maybe I should have said this early. I'm going to regret this.
Yep, this is going to be a long hour. Who let you back in the product group? Like, who let you? Like, I told them don't.
We might have about 1,500 questions then.
This show might end early.
Yep.
Okay.
I can go either way.
Well, with that being said, and this, of course, is for either of you, we've already got a question. How can AI help with my unstructured data? We have stuff all over the place, even on individual computers.
Emily, you want to go first, and I'll jump in?
Sure, yeah. So that one actually goes a little bit more into the Copilot realm. We're definitely in conversations about what the roadmap will mean for us in that area and how AI can help us build new classification types. So expanding what Purview can do with AI. Right now, we're mainly focusing on how Purview can protect AI, but that's definitely an area that we're thinking about. Nothing really to share yet outside of Copilot. So I'll let Sarahzin talk about that.
Yep. And then earlier I said something about multi-cloud there too, and taking Purview into that. So there's a lot that's coming there. And I don't want to get too deep into the weeds right now because I just feel like our conversation is going to take us naturally there. But there's a lot that we're doing that's going to be helping with the process, getting things like different summaries where you don't have to actually try to find out what's happening with the data. And then, of course, the goal is at one point the location won't matter, because when you're doing the actual policy, you're trying to protect it, whether you're using AI or just overall policy, you can do it in one area, so you don't have to actually know where the data is. It's just going to be all your data being protected in your environment. So that's the end goal if we were living in a perfect world, right? So that's what we're aiming for. And then, like Emily said, our roadmaps that we're working on right now will show a lot of that work too. So it's not just words coming out.
So, Sarahzin, I want to clarify something too, because when you mention multi-cloud, a lot of that has to do with the fact that for the longest time, and I heard this a lot from customers saying, well, Microsoft, you only really protect Microsoft stuff, and that's not true. So can you elaborate a little bit on multi-cloud and just to make sure that we're all on the same page?
Yep. So there are two different ways that we can take the multi-cloud side, right? So we have things like your actual cloud resources, whether they're in Azure, they're in AWS or Google Cloud, and then we have things where you could do things with like I'm saying things a lot here, and the reason is because we've been so used to not saying exactly what we're doing, but this side is more so on a cloud storage, right? So if you have things within Dropbox or Box, so with the DLP capabilities in Purview, you can go ahead and protect with those cloud storages, right? The same thing with the content. And then what I'm talking about with multi-cloud is your storage in the cloud services rather than storage of data in clouds. So if you're having different things like servers, or you have blob storage, or depending on whatever cloud you're using. So there's a lot of work that's being done so that you can manage access to that area, those units, and be able to prevent that data from having unauthorized disclosure or being in the hands of the wrong folks there.
Awesome. So it looks like we have a question from X, formerly Twitter. As a security pro, AI is my worst nightmare. Make me feel better about it. What are 3 things I should get in line before my LT says, go make AI happen?
I can start off there because that's kind of where we're going with the Purview for AI direction. And one aspect of that we have coming into public preview, but we do have documents about what's coming. So I can share is AI Hub. And within AI Hub, you're going to be able to see your users' activity, and that's across Copilot as well as third-party AI apps. So you're really able to see what sensitive information is shared to those AI apps. We have the capability to combine it with our other compliance controls like insider risk, and we can say or see the analytics of if a high risk user is sharing sensitive data to certain AI applications. So we're really giving you that visibility so that once you have the visibility, you can create the compliance controls to protect that AI data.
And
so I had a question, like all this AI stuff, privacy seems to be like the worst nightmare for you guys. Like, can somebody just like scratch the surface? Because I'm sure former security people like myself and others are wondering how this works with privacy, different countries, GDPR. Like, I don't know, just scratch the surface. I'm sure that's top of mind for somebody.
Sure. Yeah, we do have the ability to track which sensitive information and which sensitivity labels are going into those different AI applications. So based off of that, we can kind of derive what we need for those different compliance regulations. For a GDPR, as an example, it's a one-to-one. So we're able to track that with what sensitive information types are shared. We are looking into expanding based off of that and creating policies more easily with templates based off of the new regulations that are coming out for AI and beyond something like GDPR. There are concerns about new AI regulations. And one of the examples that always comes up is that you can't use AI for hire fire decisions. So in terms of our roadmap, we're definitely thinking about those different types of regulations that are out there.
And then if I could add a little bit to that. So whenever we're having discussions with customers, right, a follow-up question is along the lines of how do I, prevent my users or my administrators who don't have the correct privileges from accessing, I guess, higher classified data using AI, right? Or in this case, Copilot. And one of the things that we want to stress is that the capabilities that are going to be open using AI or using Copilot in this case, they're based off of that user, right? Their privileges, their permissions, their role. So there's no escalation at that time. If that person can't see the content, if that person is not, they don't have the right roles. Like for instance, you need specific permissions assigned to actually see the Content Explorer, right? You're not going to be able to use Copilot to bypass those limitations too. So that is already built in. And then, of course, you're the owner of your data. I think we have all the disclaimers out there, but that's the main one that we really want to emphasize because that's actually one of the more commonly asked questions is how, I mean, is it going to be accessed by everybody? And if so, how do we limit that? It's really just based off the user and what permissions you already have.
So AI basically adheres to the role-based responsibilities that we have today. So if I don't have access to a specific set of data, just using AI is not going to allow me to have access to that data.
Exactly. And it even starts out with the portals. If you can't access e-discovery, you can't access the e-discovery embedded experience that we're talking about coming out in April 1st timeframe. So some of those things are, if you can't access the portal at all, even with AI, you can't bypass into it too. So.
Okay. I'm sure there's a question. I'll pause mine for now.
We have a question from Vaishnav on LinkedIn, and I'm not sure how much we'll be able to elaborate on this, but if someone wants to talk about the roadmap for Zero Trust AI in Microsoft Intune, what are we able to share in that space?
So, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Emily, but that's a little out of our scope.
So I'll take that. So remember Clippy? Clippy kind of failed. But I always think that Clippy failed because Clippy didn't have the personality. So the plan is to basically, we're going to take Danny's avatar, and it's going to be kind of like a Clippy for Intune, but it's going to be Danny for Intune. So basically, you let Danny, the Danny bot is going to come and manage your Intune. I'm totally lying. I'm totally making it up.
It's funny. I actually considered wearing my Clippy shirt today. Just on a side note.
That's definitely.
Although I have made that suggestion that we should have a Danny bot on the Intune console. So, with a hat. With a hat. Yeah.
I mean, if the legal rights and all that works out, I'm good with that.
But Vaishnav, just stay tuned. We'll have that topic coming up in a show in a few months.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can't speak to Intune, but as far as like Intune joined or deployed devices, we do have endpoint DLP capabilities in terms of protecting AI, just in terms of blocking the copy of sensitive information to third-party AI applications.
Awesome. Okay, another question. We use Windows Information Protection for Windows BYOD information protection. What should we be using now that it has been deprecated?
I can definitely speak to this topic. I've been working very closely with customers on this. So Windows Information Protection was, for background, it was a separate product that we had that was accomplishing a lot of the capabilities that we have today with both information protection labeling and our DLP capabilities, mainly in the endpoint DLP space. So what WIP did is it really separated business data from personal data on devices. So the way we mainly accomplish that today, now that WIP is being deprecated, is by deploying endpoint DLP policies. And it does get a bit more complex, but we have the capabilities that you had in WIP within endpoint DLP. It does get a bit more specific than that, but that's the overall idea when you're moving off of WIP.
Thanks, Emily.
Yeah.
Let's see, other questions coming in. Okay, another question. Are there differences between MIP Unified Labeling Client and labels built into Office apps?
So for this one, there are differences, and our goal is to go fully native. And so the goal is as we with where we're focusing our investments, like we're really focusing on the native capability, right? To make it have all the built-in experiences as our unified labeling client. We have things that we're working on the roadmap with bringing back things that we had when we used um, the AIP client at that time too, just bringing that parity in. So the goal as we move forward will be yes, the built-in labeling is what we're looking into having, and that's where our future investments are. And as there are some differences still there, those differences will be diminishing or being replaced by another one of our capabilities in our existing stack. So that is still there right now, and it it's not gone, but our goal is that we'll be using everything that's built in.
Mhm.
Okay, we have another question that has come in from LinkedIn. Can I stop data exfiltration before it actually happens?
Yeah, so we can use data loss prevention to prevent the oversharing of data, basically. So that's across a number of different locations. We can do that for Endpoint, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, etc. And so what you would do with that DLP policy is you would set it up to say if there's certain sensitive information types within a file or email, or if that file is labeled with a sensitivity label, then based off of that information, you can block it from being, as an example, sent to externally.
And then just to add a little bit more onto that too, if we do our overall labeling, like you were talking about the different conditions there,
Yeah.
Emily, if we do our labeling, right, that travels with the file itself. And even if you have encryption turned on, or you have it turned on for folks that are within the organization, right, and that person decides to email that out to somebody else that's an external org, that person won't be able to access that file because it's encrypted to people who are within that org itself only. And you can build in things like not being able to print or copy or forward within that label itself too. So not only can you prevent that at the transport level of getting out of your boundaries, right, but you can also prevent it within the file level itself. And just having the combination of the two, like finding the sensitive information, like Emily was saying, and along with configuring those labels, it's a great way of building that protection on to prevent that data exfiltration.
Definitely, yeah. It's a better together story with
Yep.
labeling.
And we use the words better together. That's a great.
Yes.
I'm amazed, and I might be showing my age here, but 10 years, 8-10 years ago, especially when I was working with customers over in the consulting world, I would find it frustrating because I'm a configurator at heart. That's Danny and I like to twist knobs. We like to push buttons and manage the configuration and whatnot. And I'd get customer questions all the time about things that we now answer with AI. And I hate to dwell on that last question about can I stop data exfiltration before it actually happens? 10 years ago, if I got a question like that, I'd be like, what do you think this is? Like the movie Minority Report, where we're crime before it actually happens? But the irony is now that's what AI can do. AI can look at all the noise and all this and extract the signals from the noise and put the patterns together. For the longest time, we've seen that on the external side with Defender and investigating external threats. And now with not only with DLP, we've got tools like Insider Risk Management that can actually piece this together and let an administrator know that, hey, we got a risky user here and we might want to keep our eye on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now some may find that creepy. I get it, but at the end of the day, what are we trying to do? It goes back to that what I was talking to Danny about at the beginning of the show, where users and well, particularly compliance officers and data security and CISOs have that in the back of their mind, where they wake up in the middle of the night and they're like, oh my God, we had a massive data breach. And so we want to stop that before it actually happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And
That's
to
it.
add to that a little bit, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm going to say, Steve, so you're talking about insider risk management there, right? So with on the April 1st timeframe, and that might slip, but we've announced it, so hopefully we won't. We have an embedded experience for security co-pilots coming out with insider risk management, right? So it's one of my favorite integrations with DLP too, with having the two kind of go hand in hand. You're seeing if that user is doing risky behavior, what files are involved, all sorts of great things that are integrated with one another, right? But one of the use cases that we've been using a lot with our customers was this one user who's departing the company, right? And they're departing the company, and they're doing all these risky activities. And when you pull up this alert within the Insider Risk Management portal, there's a ton of information, right? You can jump in, it can take you to the Activity Explorer, give you other activities that the user has done. And if you're a junior analyst coming in, right? And I know that this is more so on the opposite end, right? Of if you've had something already happen in the environment, but if you're at that point where you're scrambling and you're trying to get folks that are junior to help you with this investigation, the cool thing that I've noticed with at least this Copilot embedded experience is that it takes away necessarily the need of having very senior folks do this investigation, but you can ask for a summary of this overall incident that happened in your environment, and it'll give you the breakdown within that summary itself using Copilot. Like, hey, this is a user that was involved, these are the files that they accessed, and guess what? They had an HR event, which was that they were saying that their last day of employment was going to be on March 2nd, 2024 or something at that time. So it gives you all that information, like this small, like 1 or 2 paragraphs on the right, instead of having to go through and read all this information when you open up Insider Risk Management in that pane. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because I actually just went through a couple of activities with customers yesterday and last week of showing them this specific example. And so you kind of triggered that thought in my head, and I just wanted to, I mean, I find it cool, but then I guess I'm so immersed in this environment that those things are very cool to me.
It's cool.
Yep.
Okay, question. Are encrypted files encrypted both at rest and in transit?
I can touch on this one, but I can pass it to Sarahzin.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Okay,
I know you're
cool.
passionate about it. I just saw you in our calls. I saw your face. I'm going to answer.
Yeah, so basically the answer is yes, but to explain that more, so we have client side and then service side auto labeling, and you can just do this with regular labeling as well, but this helps to explain the at rest versus in transit. So when you go to label, we can do this either on the service side, which is at rest, and that would be within a SharePoint or a OneDrive. So if you have files sitting within there, we can set service side auto labeling policies that, based off of what's within the file, we can encrypt those files at rest with a sensitivity label. And then for the in transit, so if you're sending an email or you're sending a file based off what's in that email or file, then we're able to do encryption in transit as well.
So Emily, if we're getting questions like encryption, it might be a good idea to back up a bit and maybe like explain to me, like I'm 5 years old, what a label is.
Yeah, I could go ahead and start on this one too, and then Sarahzin, feel free to jump in. So as far as labeling goes, to explain it in its most simple manner, we scan the file to determine what information is within that file. So just to give a very simple example, let's say we're scanning the file for social security numbers because that's what our policy is. So we look through that file and we pull the sensitive information types that are within that file. Does that part make sense so far? Just to make sure.
Yep,
okay.
Yep.
So we're pulling the sensitive information that's within that file, And then based off of the sensitive information that we found, we are storing that information. And then we are marking that file or stamping it basically with a file based off of the policy that it matches against. Sarah,
So-
you want to add there?
Well, so I have a funny example because Steve said, explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old, right? So
Yeah.
I'm gonna age myself a little bit here, but when I was younger, do you guys remember My Little Diary? It's like this like diary thing that you would lock and you put all your stuff in it, and nobody else would be able to lock it, right? So, kind of with what Emily was saying, you can choose obviously, what content it is that you're trying to protect, right? So in this case, it would be your most inner personal thoughts that you're writing in these papers, right? And then you close it, so only you have the key, right? Or only whoever you decide to have access to your diary or to your files will have it. And then how do you transport that, right? So do you like Emily gave an example, I think last time, or not last time, the last question with DLP, is that you're saying that if this thing that's labeled or this diary that's protected travels outside, don't let it go to an external provider, right? Or external email address or wherever you're sending that little diary. Let me get off the diary. The actual file that's encrypted, right? So it's really just determining like where do you want this to go? Do you want only your best friend to see it, or do you want your your neighbor that's outside of your boundary that you're defining to be able to see these files? So the encryption there, I think what it really comes down to is making sure that you have the policy in place, because the label, you can put a sticky note or something on a paper that say this is confidential. But if you actually don't do anything else to put an encryption, all you're doing is making it easier for you to be organized rather than protecting you with the encryption when it goes out. So I guess the summary of that, outside of the diary thing, is, are you putting just a note on it to know what it is, or actually protecting it from going out and making sure that it's not being accessed by somebody else with the built into that label?
Yeah, it's presetting those permissions.
So if you encrypt that document as a result of the label and the label policy, the encryption is now a permanent part of that document.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter where that document goes.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about things like NTFS permissions or SharePoint permissions, because the document is only going to be able to be opened by an application, first of all, that can decrypt it or has the capabilities to decrypt it, and whatever rights management you have also associated with that label.
Exactly.
So we should be putting labels on everything.
I mean, yeah,
labels definitely. Encryption, we normally suggest that you're only encrypting your most sensitive documents, which we found with customers is about 10% of their documents.
I have lots of sensitive information.
Actually, 10% of your documents.
I really don't care anymore. People can just, people find out, okay, yeah, he's got 2 kids in college. Yeah, we don't want to steal his credit. But I sense a campaign here. We should be putting labels on everything. What's that show, Portlandia? Put a bird on it. We should, co-opt that. Put a label on it.
Put a label on it.
Yeah.
Put a label on it.
I like that. Okay, Rachel. Rachel. I can't believe I did that.
Ooh.
I'm fighting words.
This is becoming a trope of the show.
I feel like there's some squaring up right now.
Up the next question. Question from X. You mentioned AI Hub. Where can I find more information about that, and how do I get access?
Yeah, great question. I think we have a link that I think is going to come in at the bottom. There it is. All right. So to go ahead and sign up for the preview, go to aka.ms/Purview. Oop, it went a little bit too fast. And then there's another / I think can we send out these links later, Steve? Or they'll show up in the
We can post them to the comments thread on the
Okay, perfect. And then the other one was aka.ms/AI Hub preview sign up. So that will go ahead and give you access to the AI Hub preview. And then that first link there, I think, is going to be showing you more information on what the preview is.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily.
Yeah.
Question from Roberto on the tech community. How could Copilot for Intune help us improve zero trust?
Well, I can take a stab at it outside of the Intune and kind of go with the example that Emily mentioned earlier with endpoint DLP, right? So if we're using the integration between Intune and Defender for Endpoint and going into Endpoint DLP, and that's just where my realm is, instead of just overall Intune. With Copilot specifically coming on the DLP side, right now what we're announcing is the summarization capabilities, right? So outside of going through and doing the automation on the back end of finding labeling and that information, the goal is with the zero trust here is to help you to go into the investigation side and decrease the amount of time that's taken, right? And I'm really stretching this right now because this is my area and I really want to get some of this data out there, right? So having the ability to really get all the data when you're doing an investigation and understanding what's happening within that user, within that file, within that device itself, if you don't have a lot of experience within actually, let's say we talk about experience. Let's talk about time, right? We all get alert fatigue with different things that are coming in, right? So the average is, I think, maybe 50 a day that a typical analyst gets, and then on top of that, you can only hit 60% if you're being super efficient trying to be really fast. So with the Copilot capability on the endpoint DLP side, in this case, the DLP alert side, the goal that we're doing is to help you with your investigations by telling you exactly what you need to look at, right? And that feeds into our standalone Copilot experience where you can get all the data that Steve mentioned earlier, being fed in from all these different sources. So then you have things that are coming in from Sentinel, you have Defender overall, DLP, site risk management, everything that's being fed into it. The goal is to just give you all this information, and you can ask these prompts to the experience itself. That way, you know what's upcoming, you know what's been done, you know your top risks that you need to investigate, what you need to resolve before it becomes some form of an event in your environment. So in the extended way, Intune being integrated with Defender for Endpoint, which then goes into the DLP alerts and then also goes into your overall getting all these signals from different areas in one location with the Copilot standalone experience. The goal is to really help make you more efficient in what you're doing in the investigations, save you time so you can actually focus on the different areas that need to be worked on to prevent any sort of an incident from happening in your environment. Very long way of answering that, and I think I twisted some of the question a little bit for my own benefit there. So
It's all fair game on this show.
Yep.
Okay, we have a question from LinkedIn. I think I heard about a new Purview compliance feature that could help me analyze messages across Copilot, Teams, email, etc. more easily and assess the risk from the inside. Can you talk more about that? Wish I could remember the name of it.
It sounds a little bit like AI Hub, just because within AI Hub, you're able to analyze what's going across Copilot. You're able to see the messages and the interactions with Copilot. But Sarahzin, it looks like you want to jump in.
So the second part, the Teams, the
Yeah.
emails, and everything else, that sounds very much so like Security Copilot from Microsoft Purview.
Yeah.
And that sounds like communication compliance.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that's what the LinkedIn user is going towards, but the communications compliance Copilot experience, right? So you have different messages that are coming through Teams, you have different areas. So the example, like regulatory compliance, right? So if you have things like stock manipulation, unauthorized disclosure, and going through all of the data, right? One of the capabilities that we have is you have several meetings that are happening, right? And say they last long. I mean, we're all under so many meetings in a day, right? I imagine that it's not just Microsoft; it's several companies that are just back-to-back meetings. And when you have meetings, you're getting the transcripts and you're doing the investigation on the back end. I mean, that's a lot of reading, right? And I don't know how efficient that is. And so with this embedded experience that's coming out, one of the cool things, and I love using the word cool, right? And I'm from Southern California, so everything we use is cool because it's not really cool here, right? So what I really liked is that you can actually use Copilot to go through and pull out all the information from your transcripts, and you can have like a several hour long meeting, and they'll tell you like, hey, so and so said that this stock is going to be $600 and we must buy it right away, or so and so said that this is happening, and so this is why this is an unauthorized disclosure and this is stock manipulation. It'll give you the capability at that point to go through and really see that data and being able to give you the risk over there, and really decrease the time that's being taken there. So I think it's communication compliance that you're looking at, and with the team's capability, email, kind of going through that, depending on if you're doing what your actual area is that you're looking into having. I think that's the match, and I think the Copilot side, Emily, like you mentioned, that's more so AI hub there too.
Yeah.
So, Emily, Sarahzin, I've got this question before. How does Microsoft know how to protect proprietary information if we're the only ones that know what that proprietary information actually looks like?
When you say we, are you saying the customer or are you saying Microsoft?
Let's say I'm a customer and I have this fancy looking proprietary information, and let's say it's a secret formula for a soft drink, or it's a series of things that are not what we would think of as commonly known sensitive information types, like social security numbers or driver's license numbers. How does Microsoft know to protect those things within?
Gotcha. So a couple of different ways here, and I also see Emily getting in here. So we both work on this a lot, right?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of different ways. The first way is, all of it does depend on the administrator, the user, whoever, being able to take what they know and somehow creating it on the Microsoft side, right? So if you do a custom information type, whether you're going off of a secret project name, you're going off of a regex, you're going off of a certain part number that's specific to your company, there are ways that we can create it, right? So let's go to the part number, right? The part number can be similar to that of like a medical record number. Depending on what you're doing, you can do things like exact data matching. So every time a number from this list that you've defined and created in the Microsoft Purview portal itself, every time it pops up, then you take certain actions, right? You either encrypt the document, or you prevent it from being sent out, or it stays within a specific boundary. There are ways that you can create. You can create the boundaries of something later. It's just really important to make sure you create that item in the Microsoft environment in order for us to be able to see it. So you can train us with using trainable classifiers. You can do the exact data matching. You can do a custom set there. They're just different ways of going through and really creating the data based upon what you have in the environment. And the cool thing is, and I've noticed this, is that a lot of folks don't know that you can test it out in the system when you make it before you create a policy. And that's something that I think that we should do a better job of publicizing, at least on the Microsoft side, because even in the last few months, I'm talking with folks who've gone through and they weren't aware that they can test out custom sets rather than the built-in sets that are there. So it would be just spending that time to create it in the environment, and then creating the subsequent policies that help with protecting it in the boundaries there.
Yeah, being able to. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, being able to test them is a great call out, because then when you go ahead and create your custom sensitive information type, like you said, Steve, maybe it's something we haven't seen before. So you're able to confirm if what you're getting back for you is truly sensitive information. The only other item that I'd add on is that we do have the fingerprinting capabilities as well. So if you have any sort of template that's sensitive for your org, then we're able to do document fingerprinting with that.
So trainable classifiers, you're basically training AI, essentially.
Yeah. Machine learning.
And that's been around for a while. So, you know, we've been AI before AI was cool. I mean, a lot of people talk about AI. they're talking about generative AI, but that generative AI is not the only AI in the game here. So that's a great thing about Microsoft 365. So, all right, I'm going to challenge the host here. Okay, so I am sneaky, I am shifty, and so I'm going to take this PDF file and I'm going to password protect it, so no one but me can access this file. And I've got secret stuff in this file, so I'm going to exfiltrate data by password protected PDF file. What about that?
It's not going to work.
Okay, I wish I could answer questions like that, like on a normal basis, just like not gonna work. Nope. So I like that. So what I'll jump into one part over here, which is that one of the scenarios there, Sneaky Steve, right? So you're talking about taking this file that you've password protected and you're going to email it out or do whatever it is, right? That one of our conditions is in the DLP, one of the predicates that we've actually created is the password protected file. So you can prevent that from being sent out in general. So even if you're like, I'm going to do this and send it to my personal email address so I can exfiltrate it and do all sorts of things with the secret recipe that Sneaky Steve has, if you're on the administrator side, you can go ahead and prevent that from being sent out overall. And then we have integrations with things like Defender for Cloud Apps, right? Where you can have the system itself go and investigate, scan, look into that file depending on where you're putting it, and actually see if it has that sensitive content, and if it needs to have additional protections there too. So we have just so many different ways that this can be prevented. So Sneaky Steve can't really be sneaky, but then you get an alert that Sneaky Steve tried to be sneaky. So then he's a little bit of a threat there.
And just to add on to that, since it does come up a lot pre-protection, we are able to protect and label and encrypt PDF files now.
So it's interesting because like the thing that the theme for me is all about security and AI. So like I think AI scares a lot of security people. I'm sure you guys have had lots of conversations about security and AI. My question is, instead of customers and security people being scared, what advantages and value should they see? Like, how would you turn that conversation around? Because immediately it's easy to knee jerk to the big scary thing, but how do you get your customers to see how AI can help them in a security perspective? Because I would love to be able to look at AI and say, hey, what are my most vulnerable devices? What are my most vulnerable users? Hey, how help me respond to risky users, which I think I see quite often in customer tenants. So how do you have those conversations to help them think about security in a better light? Because immediately I think it's thought about as, oh crap, what am I going to do and how do I protect?
Yeah, definitely. I think Copilot's a big part of this conversation, so I'll let Sarahzin take that part. But as far as where we're going in the future, I think there's a lot of excitement about what the possibilities could be with AI. I think I touched on this very early in the call, but in terms of how AI could expand to classify documents, like we were talking about with sensitive information types, we have the ability for you to define what sensitive means to you, but there are still gaps in that. And there are still documents, files, emails that aren't easily defined in certain parameters with keywords or with regexes. So I think looking towards the future, AI will be able to classify documents in a different way, which I think is just really interesting. And like Sarahzin said, it's just cool that we're going in that direction. We don't have anything there right now, but I think it's just an interesting future to look towards. But in terms of today, I'll pass it to Sarahzin for Copilot.
Yep. So I think I know that it's new, right? And new is either really great for folks who love change or really terrifying, right? And it really depends on where you are with how you want to take that. But what we've noticed, right, with the customers that we've gone through with prior previews and we've had discussions with this product set is that the there's a couple different fears, right? There's a fear of, okay, what if it has too much privilege? What if it, how do I make sure that we are not violating any of these compliance policies, regulatory compliances? There's also the job security aspect there that I know a couple folks have. It's weird. Some customers actually have brought up and called something. Oh, that's an interesting thing to tell the person who's deploying this prior previewing environment. But different. That's a different conversation, but that's a concern there. And the other concern is like, how is it really going to help me in general? Right? That's may not be a fear, but it's more so, do I really need to spend the time and resources to learn this to actually do it in my environment, right? So the way that we've gone about it is, so when we have this in your environment, when we build in with the standalone, pulling in from Defender, pulling it from all the or Sentinel, all these different areas, right? The goal is to do a few things, right? First, we're trying to, I think what we've actually been saying is catch what others miss, right? And the reason we say that and to get rid of that fear is, you're doing this investigation and you're going through all the different signals, all these alerts, all these incidents, you're finding all this information. If you use the AI, our AI capabilities with Copilot, it's really to help you know what to look for and give you the answers. So you can ask it, so it can actually pull the same alerts that you're going to be going through the portal. And it's generative, yeah, but it's generative in the sense like it's answering to you and giving you that data, but it's doing that work for you, so you wouldn't be going into those portals and looking at those 70 alerts and trying to find out the high level overview of them, right? So it's doing that work for you, right? It's making it more efficient because it's saving you the time, and making sure that you're seeing it. You're not spending hours reading these heavily detailed details pages that come up with the different units that we have, right? And the other part that I wanted to say is the interaction, right? So some of our experiences with standalone or embedded, whether you're in the Purview side or just overall M365, you're able to ask follow-up prompts. So if it doesn't give you the exact information, you could ask a follow-up prompt, right? And it's scary, but the thing is, like, it's not using privileges that are higher than yours. It's just taking what you would already be able to see in your environment, whether you're a senior SOC analyst or a junior level person that's coming in the compliance side, and just giving that data to you, so you're not going through all these portals and doing that correlation yourself. So the fear is more so it's to help you. It won't go and take a higher privilege at that time, and it's changed, but we've tried to make it so there's a there's not really that big of a learning curve for that matter, so that anybody can jump in and do those investigations for you.
That's awesome. I have another analogy that's going to reveal my age here, but for you young folk, before this thing called streaming and digital media, movies used to be on this thing called film, and film were actually negative photographs that were like basically one little image at a time. So the analogy I like to use, Sarahzin, is imagine watching a movie one frame at a time by looking at the film. When instead you can have a projector run it and you get the story. You actually get.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that from now on. It's a great one.
Okay,
I want to diary. So, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you're fine. I just want to try and squeeze in a few more questions before we have to call it quits. What is the best way to establish uniform protection policies across multiple data sources?
So I'll answer in a couple different ways here. So I'm going to assume that when you say uniform protection policies across multiple data sources, it's DLP policies, and that it's going to be across things like Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, and external cloud storage areas. That's just what my answer is on that's what I'm basing my answer on, right? So it comes up with, you do have to do some pre-work ahead of time, but if you want to do basic external sharing blocking across all of your different devices or different locations, not devices, excuse me, locations, then the compliance portal will be the way to go. In that case, you create a policy, you choose your locations. You don't want a a file that's sensitive or not labeled or whatever it may be from being shared externally. And but that it requires the pre-work, right? The pre-work of creating those labels, the sensitive information types. Defender for cloud apps, having those third-party cloud apps already integrated. Endpoint DLP setup with those devices being onboarded through Defender for Endpoint or Intune integrated with it both. It sounds like a lot of work, but the thing is that you're already doing all of these different things depending on the folks that are in your environment. So would definitely say that those uniform policies would be popping up by having that one policy with different locations in the Purview portal there. Emily, I saw you turning there a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was pretty much just going to say the same thing. When you're setting up the DLP policies, you can say, like Sarahzin was mentioning, you could choose one location, you could choose all locations. So if you have a relatively simple policy, you're able to create one unified policy for that particular action across all of those different locations.
Awesome. Okay, we have a comment, kind of a questiony comment from Sean on LinkedIn. Default config should be safe initially and admin must unlock, opening up transparency maybe. Wouldn't that technically be zero trust? Who wants to chime in on that?
I think I need to reread it, but
Default config. Are we thinking like just in time protection? What I'm not sure what that default config is, and the admin must unlock. So I don't.
They may be talking about config lock, which is, kind of out of scope for today's subject, but that's okay. We'll visit that at some point.
Okay.
Yeah,
We can
I'm
come
not
back
really
to
sure what the
that
ask is.
one. Sorry, Sean. Okay, we have a question from Christopher on Tech Community.
Okay.
We would like to control copy-paste of sensitivity labeled documents on mobile devices without limiting all copy-paste between managed and unmanaged apps. We tried to create a DLP policy to do this, but it only allows data classification types to be assigned. How are we doing this?
Taking a step back, Sarahzin, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we support DLP on mobile devices today.
Not in the way that this case that I'm reading. I would say
I think
Defender
we
for
need
Cloud
endpoint.
Apps or Endpoint. That would work too.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different ways that you can do this. If you do the Defender for Cloud App side, you can do it where you do a session control over those devices. If they're unmanaged or managed, there's a way to do a session control based off of that. But at the high level of what you really want for the different maps, I think that's like Emily said, at the high level outside of Microsoft Purview within the endpoint itself.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty sure one of our colleagues in the endpoint side can be like, yeah, this is one of our easiest.
Well,
one of our
I
most
usually
common areas.
I usually just blame Apple or Google for the gaps, but that's beside the point, I guess. But so this has been a great show. When we talk about zero trust, we talk about data sometimes, but I don't think we talk about data enough, because I think for a good zero trust strategy, I think data should be both your first mile and last mile. Often it's for a lot of customers, data becomes their last mile, but at the end of the day, it's the data that we are trying to protect. And of course, you know how we keep track of the pillars of zero trust, right? Have you heard my little strategy for that? Think double idea: infrastructure, identities, data, endpoints, application. See what I did there? Double idea.
Double idea.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Do you have that on a post-it somewhere, or do you just have it like memorized? I just want to know because
No, I have it memorized, unfortunately. Yes, that's the things I do in my spare time. Yes. All right. Well, this has been awesome, and I really appreciate you guys coming on the show, Emily and Sarahzin. And do we have any parting thoughts from either of you two?
I would say so. I know I mentioned a lot of things that are coming out in public preview in the April 1st timeframe. I have a link for that, and we're gonna find a way to get that out to folks. And I know it's in the tech community, and I know quite a few people have seen it, but I think it's a great way of doing that. Outside of that plug, honestly, I love all the questions, and I love the banter. I love the conversations here, and the immediate reactions from Danny and then Steve just going over here with the random examples that I'm going to steal now with the film and everything too. So, Emily, I just always love when we get to talk to folks together because
Me too.
So, on my end, I'm gonna say I really appreciate you guys inviting me. I'm really excited I was able to come here and provide some of my experiences and give examples and be a little silly. So I really appreciate that. And I really am excited that I was able to be here.
Yeah, thank you all so much for having us. It was fun, and Steve, like Sarahzin said, love your little comments. We have lots to steal from you.
Yeah.
In terms of my little Purview for AI snippet, we do have a lot more that's coming, and it's kind of based around the conferences that we have coming up. I'm forgetting the dates off the top of my head, but I'll make sure to send you all some information as well. Definitely an exciting space to talk about and be moving into. So love all the questions and love the conversation that we had.
Yeah, it's a great group of folks here. A little biased, but still.
Awesome. So coming up next month, we're going to have another roundtable. Danny and I will be bringing in some folks from the community to talk about all things endpoint. And with that being said, on behalf of our guest, Emily and Sarahzin, Rochelle, our adult supervision, and my co-host, Danny Guillory, this is Steve Thomas signing off for Unpacking Endpoint Management.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.